Hello, this is Earl Weinberg. Welcome to Book Circle Presents the Cavalry Cycle. This time we continue our reading of Bonfire Night. His show was wasted at this village, brooded Coy as he worked, smiling, mixing the more complex drinks, bantering with customers, Quarter listening to his earbud for reports from the lookouts, keeping an eye on the supplies for the table and trays, keeping an eye on everybody, and always smiling. A small crowd, half of them just goggling at the satyrs, too English, even the Grand Normans really, not going to relax and enjoy it like their French or Italian counterparts. Catch him working in Britain again. He did not want to be here. He was moving up in the world, not down. Look at the gigs he'd lately had, those Spanish tantrics, that Rakehelly chieftess from the Irish Empire, that nymph queen with her big boat off Cyprus, the demi-djinn who said he wanted them back, that millionaire who said he was an alchemist. Well, yes, he was probably a ghost dealer, but he paid really well. A few more like those and he would have made it and be free of debt. Instead, here he was doing a gig for free just to soften up Vimont. Not that Vimont was tough. Maybe he should have just asked up front, but he had to take every advantage, give him the party, point him at Deirdre, ask nicely, beg nicely. How far could he push Deirdre? Probably not much further. Corno's voice abruptly growled from the earbud, "Delahaye is here." "Okay, where?" Edge of the crowd, next to an old centaur. Coy spotted her. Fine. It really made no difference. The vow didn't care if she was there or not, and she couldn't absolve him of it, not that she would. Huh, Corno grunted in his ear. Vimont. That's Vimont across the fire. Can you see him? Coy could now, just. He smiled for real, if only on one side, at Corno's grunt of surprise. Corno did not often express any emotion. Changed a lot, isn't he? Big sucker now. They're all big. Usually there was no point asking Corno personal questions, but tonight was special. Coy felt like needling a little more reaction out of him. Would you trade? Silence. But of course he would. Even without the youth, the wealth, the title, it was a better class of monster. Fletcher's students and their companions approached the bonfire, leaving the dark pasture behind. And there they are, said Donovan, waving at the satyrs, in their working clothes. Vimont chuckled. Well, if they can show themselves, so can we. He pulled off his kerchief and melted back together. The other mounted men exchanged glances. He has the right of it, said Little John, and followed suit. There was a cheer from the Whiffburn Hill people. Little John shied. Vimont smiled and waved, and after a bit, the other centaurs did too. Vimont walked into the thin crowd between the tables and the bonfire, wading through the bipeds. A satyr pranced up to him and presented a tray. Vimont took a canapé with an absent nod and looked about for Deirdre. He looks very much at home, Little John remarked, regarding Vimont and sounding more than usually Scottish and distinctly Presbyterian. Is that what having a title teaches you? His wife gave a little tug on his jacket straps in lieu of reining him in, and nudged his left flank. Little John turned and saw the Honorable Bennet Darcy glowering back. Sorry, Ben, said Little John at once. I overgeneralized. Darcy relaxed and nodded, then sighed and admitted, It does look at home, though. Coy's buffet tables lay on the far side of the bonfire from the hill. Between the tables and the fire, several populations mingled. There were the satyrs, of course, and then there were the people they were serving, several couples with wary grins and a handful of singles. Some were waltzing, and one pair was attempting a tango, though the flute music did not suit either dance. Outside their area were more people, looking on, hesitantly accepting hors d'oeuvres from time to time, looking embarrassed but unable to look away. Beyond them were the people who did look away, including everyone with children. They were leaving for the other side of the bonfire, or had their backs to such goings on, their faces to the bonfire, obviously set on having a nice, traditional, family friendly burning in effigy. Vimont was in the inmost crowd, the only centaur, still smiling, apparently fielding questions and remarks, but obviously looking around. Suddenly, there was someone on his back. She clapped her hands over his eyes and gave the classic command, "Guess who?" Back among the onlookers, watching from her husband's back, Carla Littlejohn asked, "Who's that?" "Nadine," said Corliss a bit wearily. "Works at the base store?" Carla asked. "Yes, one of Vimont's regulars." Out in the crowd, "Nadine!" Vimont exclaimed cheerfully. But Deirdre? Well, Nadine was here and Deirdre was not. "When did you get here?" "A few minutes before you, I guess. Did you?" Vimont took her hands from his eyes and held them out to either side. Then he began dancing, or at least stepping and swaying to the music. There was some laughter and an acceleration of chatter in the crowd. "Are the satyrs getting to him, do you think?" Donovan asked. Little John shook his head. "The arousal effect only works on men simple, same as the transformation. In fact, it's the edge, the outskirts of the transformation. Of course, there's placebo effect." "Cut the guy some slack," said Carla. "A girl hops on his back, there's music, he dances with her. Simple. Looks like fun, really." Fletcher watched the Little Johns join Vimont and Nadine among the dancers, followed by the other mixed species couple from their group. Donovan came next, zeroed in on a single young woman, and gave her a bow such as Fletcher had given Delahaye. In a few seconds, she was on his back, holding his hands. It all looked quite charming, even decorous, but for the satyrs. He wondered if he should be worried. "Quite a show," Delahaye said. "Just as well they'll have only the sundered to see it," Fletcher replied. Then he realized his worry had motivated the remark. "That's still true, isn't it?" he asked Delahaye. She cocked her head and looked thoughtful. At that point, the flute music resolved and the Russian dance from the Nutcracker Suite started. In time with it, 3 satyrs sprang out of the shadows, as unclad as the waiters, playing on pan pipes or miming it. This naturally broke Delahaye's concentration. Soon she had a second distraction. "Damn it, where's Coy gone?" "The Fawn Master?" asked Fletcher. "The bartender?" asked Sanders, who had been watching the scene and noticed Coy's departure. "Yes, to both. He was there when your boys started playing carousel ponies." She locked eyes with Fletcher in a brief glare, clearly wondering if he was colluding with Coy. He met her stare coldly. She grunted, satisfied, and broke off to look around for Coy. "I knew you could do that sort of thing," Sanders muttered. "The trick I need," Delahaye said, "is to douse for the little git if he hasn't got a ward up." She fumbled in her coat pockets and produced a small L-shaped stick. "No, never mind, he's back," said Sanders, pointing. "There." They saw Coy picking his way through the crowd, apparently returning from the other side of the bonfire. One of the satyrs was with him, a gray-haired, ram-horned specimen, and they were escorting a young woman. She was willowy, with dark hair and pale skin that made Fletcher think of the Black Irish, in the way that no other, in that way, though no other way, like Bennett Darcy, wrapped in a long orange coat that blazed in the firelight and looked expensive. She and Coy laughed and smiled. Corno had found Deirdre on the other respectable side of the bonfire. He dented the respectability somewhat by his presence, but the friendly dark made it easy to minimize notice. She assured Coy she would be at Whiffburn Hill, and so she was. She was chatting with a local at the moment, asking general questions about bonfire night, an unfamiliar holiday for someone Franco-Irish. Corno waited for the local to turn away, then cleared his throat politely. "Mademoiselle." He had, after all, last seen her in Avignon. Deirdre turned and studied him. Gray hair, shaggy white beard, his face framed in curling ram's horns, the resemblance to a ram enhanced by the woolly shoulders, chest, and belly. He kept the rest hidden in shadow. "Corno, isn't it?" she asked. Nice girl to remember a servant's name. "Yes, mademoiselle. Shall I tell Mr. Coy you are here? He will want to come meet you." He raised the phone. Oh, sure. So, they tell me the bonfire is for burning a scarecrow. Is there anything else to it? I have never been to one before, mademoiselle, but I think the rest is mostly snacking and gossiping. I have heard baked potatoes often feature. At big ones, there are fireworks. Excuse me. He texted with her and hit send. Of course, he continued, Mr. Coy has made more elaborate arrangements. He saw two figures approaching, not yet visible to Deirdre's human eyes, and withdrew into deeper shadow. Corno? She asked, peering after him. The pair was a middle-aged couple. Was that thing bothering you, miss? The husband asked. Oh, no, Deirdre answered. Don't worry, he's just with the caterer. The man grunted. His wife said coldly, No one around here asked for a caterer, certainly not one like that. Deirdre blinked. You're sure? Quite sure. We've been asking around. That is odd, Deirdre agreed. I'll ask when I see him. The couple looked her up and down doubtfully. Certainly an outsider to Whiffburn and not even dressed like the usual outsiders from Upham, she could well be part of the problem. They nodded and retreated into the gloom. Corno came forward again. If I may escort you, he asked. That was tricky in such a place. He could not offer his arm. A naked old beast man walking off with a sweet young thing? No. Pants would have been good, but Coy had said Papa Selenos was part of the show. So he led her, picking through dark, unfamiliar grounds, choosing shadows to make sure she saw him and no one else did. We have set up the tables on the other side of the fire, he added as a helpful hint. He hoped she didn't trip. Having her fall would be bad. Catching her could also be bad. Ah, Mademoiselle Burke-Marlowe, so happy to see you. And here was Coy. Why leave the table unattended? Cornwall wondered briefly, then answered himself, nerves. Sure, returned Deirdre vaguely with a weak smile. He took her arm and reversed course back to the tables, leaving Corno to trail after in safe obscurity. Having fun? He asked. I suppose. It's nice of you to forgive the payment. Deirdre's father owed Coy for a party. Coy had waived this in return for Deirdre's attendance tonight. It does seem odd to take payment for catering one party by inviting me to another. We are square now that I'm here? Very soon. And I think you'll have a splendid time. I just have a favor to ask. I said Roland Vimont is here, you recall? Sure. But didn't he just join the Grand Norman Cavalry? That's right. The base is the next village over. They were between the fire and the hill now. He waved toward the blaze, beyond which lay the field, the wood, and Upham. They're Centaur Cavalry? So he's changed? Coy scented trouble. Yes, I've seen him. Looks amazing. Bursting with vigor. Being half horse seems to agree with him. Would love to give you a ride, I'm sure. By the firelight, he saw the alarm in her face. Only if you want, of course. Right. Well, what's the favor? Just be nice to him, show him a good time, be his date for the night. Easy. I mean, the two of you did rather light up Avignon the summer before last. But then he was a man. Coy snorted silently. Vimont had been 18, absurdly funded, and without visible responsibilities. Not Coy's idea of adulthood, but no doubt Deirdre had a different perspective. This wasn't going well at all. Bleeding hell. The girl was fine around satyrs, who were surely much more upsetting to the delicate or the conventional. What was different? Sheer size? Oh, but she had always known the satyrs as satyrs, never as men, and none had been lovers. Vimont was last summer's romance. She had known him very well, if not very long. It must be the change that squicked her out, the prince to frog thing, the degeneration. Well, he could certainly relate. He should have thought of it earlier. Was he wasting the price of her dad's party? Nothing for it now. He selected a calm, reassuring smile and said, Oh, he's still the same Rollo, really, just more legs. All I ask is you smile and act pleased to see him. Her lovely brow puckered. Well, why? What's going on? Coy sighed and decided to be candid. That could be very disarming. I need a favor from him. I need to ask him for money. She looked at him, clear and direct. So I'm a sweetener? He smiled gamely. The best I could think of. It's not like you get nothing from this, and I do hope you'll enjoy the night. Right. For you to forgive the price of the party, you must want a lot of money from Rollo. Ah, yes, her family were esoteric Cartesians and owed their fortune to their mathematical scryings. Yes, he admitted, I do. Her brow puckered again. Poor Rollo, why did he do it? My guess is that his dad didn't want him to inherit the barony. I don't know any details. Grand Norman law, you have to be human to inherit. I suppose they don't want to chance a literal jackass on the throne. She laughed, so he laughed back. They were at the tables now. The dancers included centaurs with girls on their backs. Looked good. He waited for Deirdre to notice, watching for her reaction. Oh, damn, one of the prancing ponies was Vimont. Would that girl on his back be another complication? Delahaye relaxed again, with her quarry back in sight. Fletcher tried to relax too, to see if his receptance would let him. So, he asked conversationally, how do you think Mr. Coy avoids turning into a satyr himself? After all, it appears that he works around them all the time. If Fletcher was trying to relax, Sanders was not. He peered into the dusk, wishing he had been one of those fellows who got equine night vision, trying to make out the movements of the people beyond the firelight. He scanned the lit part of the crowd, especially the faces of folk who resented these ribald, uninvited intruders. He eyed the sparks coming off the top of the bonfire. Ever since he had seen Fletcher and Delahaye outlined against them, he had felt they were not quite natural. Now they were forming a sparkling little tornado above the flames. He supposed that might be natural. Delahaye nodded at Fletcher's question. Good point. I've wondered sometimes. Maybe he has turned, keeps his pants on, had his horns polled, his hair hides his ears. Failing that, there's such a thing as plastic surgery. But I don't really think so. He has too good a grip on himself. I don't know. Maybe he sent, Sir, interrupted Sanders. He pointed up the hill and was rewarded with an exclamation of, ah, from Fletcher, who sounded satisfied. Sanders knew that ah, some receptant expectation had been fulfilled. A small group was coming down the hill toward them. As they neared the light, Fletcher made out White, now looking upset and sober, 3 people he did not know, and one of the satyrs. One of the 3 unknowns, a big man, gripped the satyr by one shoulder and one spike-like horn. This left the satyr to stumble along with his head crooked down, tripping over rocks and heather. The 2 remaining people in the group were a man and a woman. They were arguing with White and the satyr wrangler, but paused when they reached Fletcher, Sanders, and Delahaye. The man demanded of Fletcher, "Is this creature anything to do with you lot?" "No," Fletcher answered firmly. "I knew nothing about him or his lot until a few minutes ago. What's the problem?" "He's here running around naked is the problem," the woman said. "There are children here." She glared at the satyr, who cringed. His mobile ears went down, his tufted tail tucked between his knees, but his erection, even in this situation, did not waver. "Moreover," said the big man, "he's fair to bringing the sundering down on us. He got seen up the hill, and now rumor has it there's indecent exposure going on at our bonfire." "Which there is," the other man growled. "So," said the big man, "Fred and Bob are coming over here to see what's what, as they shouldn't." "Fred and Bob," White explained, "are the other 2 constables. They're not sundered. This here is Constable Gill, William Gill, Bill Gill, and of course he is sundered." "And you are?" Fletcher asked the satyr. "Georgie, sir," the satyr answered, rolling his eyes to Fletcher, his head being immobilized by Constable Gill. "Well, Georgie, what were you doing up the hill, in the altogether? Surely you know you can't go around ordinary neighborhoods like that. It can't be that long you've been a satyr." "That long?" echoed Gill. "A handful of years ago he was human." "6," whispered Georgie. "7 soon. I changed on New Year's Eve." Then more loudly, defensively, "I was already stripped for the show when the boss told me to do lookout duty. A lot of lookouts this time. Then he gets nervous and tells me to look for a girl." The woman snorted. The men growled. "No, a particular girl, a guest. Deirdre Burke-Marlowe showed me a picture." "Well, you can stop looking," the woman said. "She was found by another one of you." She glanced past the fire to where Deirdre stood next to Coy, staring at the dancers. About the other two cops, said Delahaye. There's them and a pack of curious on the way over, said Gill. Normally it wouldn't matter. Nothing to see but us and a few of you, a nod to Fletcher and Sanders, all glamoured up and everyone with stories ready, but nothing like him, and he shook Georgie's horn for emphasis. Glamoured, repeated Fletcher. Right. He reached out and seized Georgie's other horn. Gill stared up at Fletcher and held on, leaving Georgie in the role of wishbone. Give him over, please. I've a job for him. Gill surrendered his prey. Fletcher turned Georgie to face the dancers. Go down there right now and tell every centaur that Fletcher says on with the glamour. Quick. He let go the horn and gave Georgie an encouraging shove between the shoulder blades. The satyr dashed off down the remaining slope past the fire to the tables, where he apparently blurted something to Coy, then into the crowd. Used to be human? Asked White. Yes, said Fletcher, pulling out his own kerchief. It's catching, but one night isn't enough exposure. No one's changing tonight. Then he looked up into the dark. Captain, said Sanders as their illusions melted over them, look at the fire. Above it, the sparks. Yes, said Fletcher, a spark tornado, but that could be natural, surely. Yes, but it's been coming and going ever since we got here. I think someone's playing with it. Maybe they're enjoying themselves. I thought I heard a laugh just now. Bill Donovan had not been a great dancer with only 2 legs. Another 2 just added to the confusion, and the music didn't have a very solid rhythm, but he was trying, more crow-hopping than anything else. However, the girl on his back, Jen, was laughing, so things were working. Then, abruptly, there was a satyr in front of him. Fletcher says put on the glamour, he said, then dashed over to Darcy. Whoops, said Donovan. Time for the costume ball. Didn't know Fletcher was here. What's happening? Asked Jan. Mundane miners coming, I suppose, unsundered. He tied on the kerchief and saw the dim outline of the horse head appear before him. Weird, exclaimed the girl. How does it look to you? Multiple exposure. There's a copy of you in front of me, transparent. And you look transparent too. That is, your human part. Huh. He glanced at Darcy, then at Vimont. Looks clearer from the outside. You'd better get off, though. Judging by my friends and their ladies, you're reaching through my rider to the straps on my jacket, the invisible jacket worn by invisible me. He noted Vimont kneeling for Nadine's convenience. Good idea. He quickly did the same for Janice, that was it. Meanwhile, the background music had hiccuped. The Nutcracker Suite had been interrupted by the opening run from Mozart's Magic Flute, then resumed. This was clearly a signal for the satyrs to dash away either into the darkness or up to the table. The latter returned from the table in artfully ragged forest green shorts and artificial ivy garlands. The garlands would either hide their horns or make it look like the horns were part of a headdress. Their tails, apparently, were just rammed into the pants. It looked quite uncomfortable to Donovan, who switched his own tail in sympathy. They have a system down, said Ben Darcy, who now stood beside him. Indeed, friend, the sunderin' and carrying it off, with no expensive glamour. Well-trained minions, said Little John, showing up on the other side of Donovan, his wife afoot beside him. Donovan liked to poke at Little John when he got to sounding judgmental that way. Well, but aren't we minions too, Alistair? We are free servants of the king, Little John retorted, and gave our oaths freely. He waved at a dancing satyr. I wonder how freely he gave his service oath to Coy there. Donovan nodded, but glanced over at Corliss, who was leaning down to the girl who'd just dismounted him, smiling as he apologized for the end of the dance. Corliss, who enlisted to satisfy a vengeful goblin. How free had he been? Then there was Vimont. He certainly thought he was free, but Ben Darcy had spotted a rejected heir on their first day, and Rollo had since repeated enough of the sweet talk Vimont père had used to persuade his son of the fun life of a man-horse sent off to explore the edges of creation. But Donovan himself had thought it would be fun. He'd just decided on his own. Well, together with his foster brother Ben. Donovan watched Vimont, abandoned now by Nadine, over at the tables, talking to Coy and a tall girl in an orange coat. Nobody looked happy. Vimont was smiling, but it was a worried smile. Donovan caught Darcy's eye, and they started over at a trot. And we'll find out the trouble next time.